Listen, thank you for having us here today. The morning has been a fun-filled event, filled with lots of insight, rigor, discipline, and I think there's some takeaways here for those of us that need to get back to work and continue some of the thought processes or things that we build upon from the morning. What we'd like to do at this session, specifically as it relates to governance regulations and the growth in the digital area, is go with the panel, derive from panel insights from their experiences and what they're working on today and what they can share. And I'd like to have a little more candid, free-flowing panel where I want questions from you throughout the event. So I'm going to start with the first one. I'm going to ask just to poll the audience in terms of what industries you're in. How many of you are from the financial banking industry? Hands up high, hands up high. I'm getting a little older, I can't see it, okay. How many from retail? Retail's my favorite industry. Okay. All right, not as many. Health? Okay. Now, not everyone put up their hand, so what did I miss? Automotive? What did I miss? Sorry?
Social science.
Social science, okay, okay.
Financial services, non-banking.
Okay, okay, I wouldn't have thought of that, thank you, okay. I bet you I'm gonna get a question from there. Will you watch him? What else, anything else that I missed? Transportation, another favorite one of mine from Loblaw, yeah. Okay, the reason I bring this out is that every single industry that you're involved in requires some type of regulation, requires some type of governance, and some types of data security and rigor so that your information is protected, and quite frankly, the people that are ingesting the information don't use it for the evil good. So in sharing with those different insights, I'll start off with this. News Corp just announced today that they're announcing a committee, an algorithm group to oversee all algorithms ingested for AI interpretation across all industries. That was announced this morning. News Corp, for those of you that are not familiar, it's an $8 billion industry, a quite sizable company. If I take some stuff from the past, we all know what happened with Cambridge and Facebook. We've seen it throughout the morning. Different companies on the panel have made some significant acquisitions. TD, it was 100 million, 110 million. You're going to have to justify some type of ROI in terms of that. We got some panel experience that have worked directly with Canada from a national perspective in Ottawa, from a federal perspective in providing disciplines of machine learning. That's Patty. I'm going to call you Patty. So let's start off. AI and ethics. How can we ensure that AI algorithms do not reinforce discrimination? Who wants to go first? I'll pick.
I can start.
Patty first. Patty, go ahead.
Okay, so that's a difficult problem. Even for us as a developer of these machine learning and as the actual builders of these machine learnings or like AI products, they are very complex models. And as humans, we have certain limitations in our cognition system. So even as a developers, it's like a black box for us. So it's so hard to identify all the blind spots. Even for humans, I think it's so hard to identify all the blind spots. But for machines, it's much more complex. And it's not there is no simple solution to solve these problems. But first of all, we can have more test and debugging kind of approaches and methodologies for our models to identify these blind spots. So we need to identify, and then there might be other solutions because AI and machine learning is all about math and optimization. That's why we believe before, I think it's good to also address this issue that before machine learning scientists believed that their models can't be biased, they can't be racist, they can't be sexist. But we missed a very important point, which is data, the main ingredient of any machine learning model. We train all our models using data, and the source of data is normally human behavior. So humans are the ones who collect data, label or annotate data, and also evaluate the quality of the data. So it's very simple or very clear that data inherit all our values and biases, and we use it as the main ingredient to train our machine learning models. Of course, math and optimization is not biased. but data is biased. So I think there is an emerging research area in machine learning community, how we can use the same math and optimization to solve discrimination and bias in machine learning models. So basically, normally, we optimize our models for global population using the data we have. How we can define micro segments in our population and optimize our models over different segments rather than the global population.
That's good, Patty. That's really, really good. Now, I'm going to warn you guys, you're going to share this panel. So go in depth, but let the others go ahead. So Mark, you weigh in. How do you build on that?
Maybe I'll just elaborate quickly. First of all, those were all great points, particularly on the data and on the bias side. I'll talk a little bit about the AI decision framework, because the way we view it, it's not just the technical, the science behind the AI, it's how that fits in within an overarching decision framework. And we term this as humans in the loop. So it's ensuring that the AI or the machine learning is creating the prediction, but then overlaying the prediction with sound judgment. And that's where the human intervention comes in, setting the guardrails, be it through the data or through the model, being able to assess and evaluate that the prediction that's being made is kind of within expectation, and using both the man-machine to create the decision. So I think that's really key. It's the interaction between the operator and the machine to really make these decisions and new models really work well.
Yeah, and if I could just jump in on that, I think, and also Patty brought up a really good point around testing. So one of the kind of key methods that we use at Normative is what we call rat testing. So kind of thinking of, people are probably familiar with the MVP or the minimum viable product and trying to get a prototype into that MVP state. Well, the process of getting to that point is very iterative, involves many cycles. And one of the methods we take is rat testing, which is riskiest assumption testing. And I think that, one of the kind of clues to maybe, supporting in making products and services that are less biased and have less inherent bias within them is making sure that we're going through very rigorous prototyping and testing of these tools and of these products before they're released to the general public. Another sort of tactic that is very interesting, and it's sort of from the world of design, is this idea of seamless design. So when a product is released to consumers and they're using it and interacting with it, giving them some transparency, giving them some, showing them the beautiful seams, if you will, the aspects of the product that maybe aren't perfect, and allowing them to tinker or knob tube those to adjust the output so that it is more accurate, so that it can not just predict something for them, but actually inform them in a more human way.
Okay, so, Joe, you're next. Now, Scotia's got to figure it out. What are you doing at TD?
Good for you. So I think the notion of the human and math working collaboratively, I think it's a really important one. We've kind of thought about it on its head, though. It's too late once you know that women over 80 can't pay their mortgage back to figure out what you want to do about that. That's something that you should never have been looking for in the first place. So we think that the biases in the data, we need to have rules that start to dictate what criteria are in bounds or out of bounds for a decision in the first place. And I actually think we had a long conversation just yesterday about gender. In what circumstance is gender going to be related to a kind of a decision? Should gender ever be related to a lending decision, a pricing decision? Does this matter? Does this notion matter in 2018? And the only example that someone could come up with was that in an insurance context, men will die sooner. Okay, that's cool, good to know. But it's important to understand, we call these envelopes where there are certain kind of categories of decision that need to be done. Is it fraud? Is it cybersecurity? Is it lending? Is it insurance policy underwriting? And from those things we can start to do, before we do the analytics, what data is germane to that decision and in bounds, so that when we get to the end, we don't have to actually worry about whether that was in bounds or not. We made decisions before that, and that will help with the biases, because we decided beforehand about the data that we thought could be biased and should not be within bounds for that. And by the way, that's not trivial, because there are hundreds of different scenarios that exist every day, and so we're spending a lot of time trying to do that.
Can I add
Okay,
one
absolutely,
point to it? And it's a very good point. So basically, we believe the attributes and features that we use to train our machine learning models, there shouldn't be any direct kind of information about our like gender or ethnicity or religion or any of these kind of private sensitive attributes. But it's not as simple as just simply remove gender from your data, because there are so many other attributes that encode your gender. It's very interesting, like what social media do you use? And there is a high correlation between white women and the Pinterest users. So it's not easy, like nobody even like can imagine that if we use what social media do you use, we are encoding both your ethnicity and gender in our data. So like that's the complexity of machine learning. And it's not even as simple as that one. Sometimes we learn representation for individuals by using the same math, based on the co-occurrences, based on the co-locations. I give you an example. For for NLP tasks, we harvest data, we harvest text from web, and then we learn representation for each word. We want to learn a representation that captures semantic meaning of words. And it's very interesting that based on our analysis, there is a correlation between women and housewife. We completely automatically learn the representation, but because of the co-locations of the word woman and housewives, and there is a correlation, and there is a we learn it's very similar representation for man and engineer. So like it's very, very, very tricky how we can identify sources of bias. That's why we believe the best kind of maybe solution is to use the optimization and math, because there are so many different sources of biases and problems that we can have.
Who does this best? Who does this optimization best in your view? No, who does it best? Who would do it best? Who would you recommend? Is it on the academic side would do it? Is it a regulator? Is it a third body? Is it government?
I think academic, yeah.
Is it?
I think
Okay.
people with machine learning background, and like, of course there should be lots of discussion between different players. Of course there should be discussions between regulators as well.
So collaborative, it's a collaborative.
It's a collaborative, but at the end we have to use the same kind of technology to solve this problem as well. That's my point of view, but I might be right.
And I think it also depends on the kind of decision that you're making. So the correlations that you're describing, for instance, they're in a financial institution, you have one that is about fraud and lending, but there's another one that's about a promotional item. Like if I want to decide whether I want to send a pink water bottle to somebody that has a logo on it, that's probably going to be more attractive to your woman housewife than it would be to your man engineer. And so the ethics of the usage becomes really important, the definition of what this is for, because people want to be treated intimately under certain circumstances. I want you to know who I am, and other times they don't want that to affect certain things. The distinction between those use cases is super important.
In your view, who
right.
owns that decision?
So that's a very good point. And I can add to it that we don't want to, so basically we want every parts of our population to get the same utility out of our machine learning model. So that's completely okay if I really want to get pink kind of colors as my gift. But how about if I don't want to get a pink color, and only because of my gender I get the false kind of recommendation. So that's what we want to get the same utility. We want to have the same false positive rate for people of different backgrounds.
Yeah.
We want everybody to benefit from machine learning and AI, no matter what's their background. So, of course, if that's a completely true recommendation, I'm completely okay with that. But I don't want to be I don't want to be affected mostly because of my background by the errors of the machine learning models.
Okay, we've done a little bit of talking here. We've provided some views, some insights. I even got one question in. I'm gonna turn to you guys. So I got hands up. So one. Anyone else? So I'm gonna go with someone who hasn't. I'm gonna come back to you, sir, and I'm gonna come back to the financial institution. What was that? This gentleman's in here somewhere. You haven't, sir.
Search to go on topic governance, right?
Oh, we can't hear you. I'm coming. Sorry, this is off script, but there you go, sir.
talking about governance of data, what's the right balance of governance? We believe there should be governance of data. However, how much of the business do we impact with the governance of data?
Okay. Who wants to take that one? I got to put this thing back on. Go ahead.
You know what, I'll start, and maybe I'll just make it a little broader, not just data, but maybe the data science kind of solving problems through the use of data. I think the question is really about, there's governance, and then balancing that with a point that was made in the previous presentation, which was pace. And I think pace is really important because what's going on outside of in my case, in the banking industry, is the pace of change is very fast. Technology is moving fast, innovation is moving fast. There's a lot of disruption going on, and it's always a balance of how do we ensure we're properly governing, we have the appropriate controls so we're not making mistakes or putting our customers' data or customers' information at risk while moving with a certain level of velocity. And some of the work that we're doing inside the bank is how do we partner with stakeholders to really do things quickly. Test and learn was kind of used before. How do you incubate ideas? How do you test new forms of data? How do you put it in at a small before you go into large production? So I think of governance of data, I'm thinking, getting a diverse group in a room to solve a problem together. Start small, test it that the data that you're using is giving you the results that you're looking for, and then you can scale bigger. And I think that high velocity of gaining insights from data is a way to balance the, at times, cumbersome governance or regulations around it.
That's good. I'm going to sneak through here. You go on. I got to go to my friend over here.
I have a different role in the organization, which is about, I run the data lake. And effectively what that means is I create a library from which people come and select books off the shelf. And so my concept of governance is a little bit paradoxical. I might coin this phrase, governance for speed. So most people think about governance as a way to stop you from getting what you need. When you go to the library, maybe you're all too young for this, but you remember the Dewey Decimal System and the binders? What would it look like to you if you just had books in a big pile on the shelf? You'd have a whole mess of stuff that you couldn't use. So effectively, if we all agree that data is the secret sauce to analytics and AI, the major impetus for making that faster is availability of data that you need, that you can find, and that you should have access to under the right circumstances. And so for us, it's about applying the right level of data governance at the right level. So if you want to do hardcore AI, you don't need it to be right and conformed and dimensional with the dashes and tax IDs and such. You need to know what is it, where can I find it, and who should have access to it under what circumstances. And then as things start to creep in with respect to regulations and other, you start to squeeze that a little bit. And so we fundamentally are trying to make it so that it's easy to find that what you are looking for and apply the right level of governance with respect to tagging and availability.
I can add a small point to it. So we talk about fairness and bias, and it's very interesting because normally we don't have access, as a developer of these machine learning or products, we don't have access to the sensitive information. And actually we need those sensitive information to test our models against potential bias. And that's a kind of discussion normally.
I thought we could be friends.
No, I don't believe so.
You guys relax up there.
That's a big problem. Maybe we can come up with some kind of privacy techniques, privacy preserving techniques to keep the utility of data or keep the distribution of the data and at the same time hiding the information, like personal information, and keeping also keeping the privacy of our users. Mm-hmm. But it's not as simple as say, okay, I think it's a very complex kind of problem and discussion as we move on to the AI era.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
About that, just one thing. The two conversations.
You guys are doing it.
There was a conversation around your digital identity, and that's a fascinating topic. And in banking, if you think about how does one bind data to another data source. It's usually via something that you don't want shared. It's your credit bureau information that connects you with a tax ID. It's your Twitter handle. It's these things that you don't want around, right?
Exactly.
And the very thing that we need is digital binding of identities in a way that can protect that data. And that's a very tricky problem. And if the industry can figure out a new way to create that binding without jeopardizing your data, we can be friends again.
All right, next question.
Let's work
I'm
on
going to
it.
separate you two. Hold on. Sir.
Yes, Paul Erb, advisor to entrepreneurs. And I'd really like to know in the global context how governance and regulation is going to help or hinder Canada knowing how much is being invested in AI. The US, the White House just initiated a big funding of AI research. The UK has already decided that it's going to fund 1-point-something billion pounds to AI research. And China has identified that it wants to be global leader in AI by 2030. How can Canada stand up against that?
Nobody asks easy questions anymore. Nothing like yes, no, true, false. So we're going to give, I got to come over here, but we're going to give you a couple minutes to go. Who wants to go first? Go ahead, Lindsay.
Yeah, good question. There's been a couple talks this afternoon about innovation. And I think, Canada, reflecting on what was talked about this afternoon, Canada's in a really good position to produce a lot of innovation. I mean, we have a very diverse population. We have, funding and education in the right places. I think, again, it's a situation of probably pace and how quickly we can produce, innovative ideas. I think one of the keys to it, and I think the team here has been talking a lot about it today, is diversity. And when I think about the questions behind when we're creating these products and tools that have machine learning algorithms that drive them, my perspective is that having data scientists work together with designers, for example, and having designers also understand the science behind that is really important. The design practice, design is really giving shape to things. So, at Normative, we have a research practice. They gather knowledge. They go into the field. We do small research versus, what I consider big data. We gather small data, really rich, thick description about context and what people are doing. And so I think that, in order to use that knowledge and to give shape to ideas and things that are innovative, designers and the design process needs to be a lot more scientific. We need to be more hypothesis driven, and then we need to work together with a diverse group of people, machine learning engineers, government, business, having that multidisciplinary or even, I would say, interdisciplinary approach to tackling these problems together is one of the keys to us doing that.
Okay, I'm going to get to the next question. Oh, hello? I'm going to get to, no, Paul, no.
Here's an answer to my question. Governance and regulation in Canada is part of that. What you've talked about is the innovation. We've got a great innovation environment, but is it being stifled by what the government's considerations are, by the ethical considerations? Or are we ahead of what other countries are doing in this context?
Can I answer that
You
question?
can, but I want to be respectful to everyone here, so I have a few people I have to go ask questions to as well. So let's, in the interest of time, and that's a great question, let's hammer this out in 30 seconds and we'll get back to you. I will get back to you because I have a view, but I'm not on the panel. Go ahead.
In my view, in my humble view, I guess, one of the problems with regulators is that they need more time to catch up with technology. And by the time they catch up, the technology moved on. So there is normally the regulators are not aware of the capabilities and limitations of the technology. So that's why we believe that, normally, of course, you're right. I think you had a very, very good point that we need to fill these gaps. We need to fill the gaps of regulators, designers, and product owners, engineers, and scientists. But first of all, because normally when we talk about AI, people start thinking about singularity, robots will take over our jobs, robots will take over our planets. instead of like, so basically it's our responsibility to find the right vocabulary to make the technology, the current technologies accessible for people with very different backgrounds. And then there are gonna be user requests. So basically we have to do it it's gonna be all of us responsibility at the same time, regulators so it's not only about regulations, because you have a couple of regulations in place, for example, GDPR in European Union, and there are a couple of things in that legislation that it's very ambiguous, like right to explanation. And when you ask them, what do you mean by explanation, there's no concrete answer to this question. So there are gaps. It's not about regulation. We believe we should be, as designers of these products, be more proactively thinking about the possible consequences, who will be affected, what are different consequences, and not limit ourselves only to the regulations.
So put 20 seconds on the clock. I think that fundamentally what regulators want to know is, are you in control of your decisions? You made a drug, do you know where it was, where it came from? You made a lending decision, do you know how you did that? The danger of AI is that people in a self-learning or an unsupervised learning situation start to lose control of those decisions. Our mandate is to get control of that. How do we know what's happening and how our decisions are being made? We solve that problem, which is not trivial. This problem will start to abate.
Okay.
How'd I do?
Well, you guys, I don't know. You haven't done well, I'm telling you. But I want to give each of you about a minute, or well, actually, no. I'm going to give each of you 10 seconds. I want you to leave us with your final thoughts. So anything that you think we haven't covered, and we will definitely ask Michelle, and we'll ask Steve, for whoever does this next year, we need another half hour. Because we cannot answer these questions. This is good because the dialogue is great, but I feel like I'm shortchanging both the audience and these panelists for A, getting the full answers that they need, and B, providing your full explanation given that you have such rich information. So after this is done, we'll meet in the back. Is there wine and beer? What is there? Sorry. I didn't get the memo. You got 10 seconds each. We will start with Mark.
Sure. So I'll just briefly touch on partnership. I think with data, technology, AI, all the advancements going on, I think what's become abundantly clear, at least for myself in a bank, is how are we solving problems with diverse stakeholders? In the case of regulations, having audit or to come up with the guardrails around it. So it would be partnering with our regulatory partners and not excluding them.
Sounds good.
I had a professor in business school who used to say, make sure that anything you can do, you wouldn't be ashamed of being on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. I think about AI that way. Before you do anything, think about what it is you're trying to do, and is it the right thing to do, and under what circumstances you would deploy it. And if you don't know the answer to that, all the data in the world and all the horsepower in the world won't get you anywhere.
All right, Patty.
And it's because it's analytics by design.
10 seconds.
I would say start by clearly define the problem. And it's very related to your friend. Make sure you are solving the right problem. One of the biggest problem right now we have is that it's really, normally it's very difficult to encode the real world objectives in a simple real valued number. And that's what our machine learning models or AI products do. They optimize a real value rather than optimize our kind of complex objective.
Yeah.
Lindsay, you got 30 seconds.
Oh, wow, okay, 30 seconds, all right. I would say just reflecting what people are saying up here right now, think about the purpose behind what you're doing. I think, AI and machine learning, they're big terms. They hold a lot of meaning. We're talking about artificial intelligence. All of that is really about human augmentation. So it's not different from the stethoscope. And when that was invented a couple hundred years ago, to allow physicians to get the superpower of listening inside somebody's chest, so they didn't have to rely on visible symptoms only to diagnose. So it's not different from past technologies and past advancements, and I think that if we really connect that back to the human experience and how these products and services are meant to or should be augmenting our own capabilities, then we'll be checking a good box on the list.
You guys are great. Seriously, this was tough. I'm glad I'm here and not there. So I'm going to do a quick wrap. How much time? Well, I need 30 seconds. So I got 30 seconds? So here's what I heard. Governance and regulation are an easy thing that some companies have figured out and wholeheartedly will use it to gain a competitive advantage to their competitors. That's false. You're not laughing, so I can tell that here's the truth. This is hard. In Analytics 4.0, like Tom Davenport says, or like our friend Jack Phillips says, this ain't easy. This is going to be hard. It's going to be a rigor, and it's going to be a process. I refer to it as a journey. Those of you that embark on this journey, I think there's a tremendous amount of awards in the end. You see how these accomplished leaders are in their respective fields. They're all leaders, and they have some great insight. Hopefully you guys are available after this to answer some of the questions that I didn't get to, so I apologize for that. I'd like to thank you. A round of applause for our panelists here. Thank you so much.